Welcome to Louisiana Heart Beats. I'm Sudie Landry, and today I have with me a special guest. He has already spoken at my local Writers Guild of Acadiana, a local writing organization. He's also the author of the book that you see on our screen in the back. Welcome to the show, George F. Schneider.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, because I really want to take time and do something that I've never done, even though I know I'm supposed to, but I've never done. But I got reminded last night that I should also thank you very much for doing what you did for our country, for serving. And my granddaughter, who just got out of the service, told me to be sure to tell you thank you for everything, including that Purple Heart that we will be talking about later. So with that said, Acadiana, George has written this book. It's edited by his daughter, Barbara O'Connor, and it's about World War II, and he's the vet. And we're going to talk about the different things, the different campaigns that he was part of. But the first thing I want to do, we've talked about so many wonderful things, it's definitely going to have to be later a documentary on anything that we do not talk about today or anything that we may want to share later on. And so with that said, I'm going to ask you, George, what was your reason for writing the book?
Okay, the reason was I'm a first-generation American born of French-Swiss parents, so I grew up not knowing any relatives. I never met an aunt, an uncle, or grandparent, or cousin. And then when I got married and started a family, the same thing was with my new family. My work always took me too far away from relatives, so they grew up not knowing any either. Well, they knew some, but very little about them. So I decided I would put in writing what I knew of my ancestry, and it wasn't until 1994, really, which was the 50th anniversary of the D-Day landings in Normandy, the veterans finally started to speak openly of their experiences. So I did likewise, and I decided, well, I'll make this in the form of a book, and it'll be my autobiography. It's all done from memory. I've been blessed with a good memory, so everything in it is stories that I can recall, and none of them are embellished that I'm aware of. And we ended up with 328 pages of memories. The book is divided into 3 parts. The first part is from birth until the war, really. Covers my childhood and the growing up during the Depression. We have some excellent Depression stories that people who have not lived through the Depression won't believe it, but they are true. They were very difficult times. And then the second part is from the bombing of Pearl Harbor and the World War II experiences. Now, I participated in the 5 major campaigns, so it covers quite a bit of it's a short time period, but it actually covers the greatest portion of the book. And then the third part is post-war, covers going to college, finally going to work, a profession, getting married and family. And as a result of my profession, I was able to travel quite a bit. I've been to over 50 countries and worked under different cultures, and so I have some interesting stories there. Worked among cannibals of New Guinea and
oh my goodness,
with communist countries. So even the third part also has some interesting stories. So basically, that's what the book is about.
Okay, let's just slow this train down a little bit, and I'm going to back up and say, okay, George, where were you born?
Well, I was born in Akron, Ohio,
okay,
1924. And grew up there my first 6 or 7 years, and then the Depression drove us out in the country. We had to go to an old farm in order to survive. And then my childhood was mostly out in the country on a farm.
Okay, sir. Okay, how old were you when you enlisted, or were you drafted to go into the Army?
Right. Well, I graduated from high school in '42, and I was 17, and I wanted to enlist. My older brother was already in the service, and my parents would have to sign, but they wouldn't sign for me, so I waited until I was 18, and then I was drafted.
Okay, now I understand, you know, you mentioned a little bit about what was in the book, okay? Let's talk about the 5 campaigns. The first campaign, tell us a little bit of what it was about. For people like me that don't really know what a campaign is.
Well, the campaigns, they're divided for various reasons because of the location of the battles.
Okay.
The first campaign is a Normandy campaign, and that's from the D-Day landings until July the 25th, which was when we finally broke out of the hedgerow country and start rolling faster toward Paris. And on the 25th of July, the campaigns changed from Normandy to Northern France campaign. That campaign covered battling across France, freeing country or cities and villages, and we finally got to Belgium. And when we got into Belgium, this was still called Northern France. We were the first division into Belgium, and since I speak French, I was on an advanced party, and so that I could contact their resistance forces, which was the L'Armée Blanche. So I was one of the first Americans into Belgium, and that was still considered the Northern France campaign. And then after that, once we got into the border of the Netherlands, it changed to the Rhinelands, and that covered the area in the Netherlands up against Germany. And then from the Rhinelands, the Battle of the Bulge started in December, so we then went to Belgium again, and that was called the Ardennes campaign. And then after the Ardennes campaign, we went back to where we were, and they reinstated the last campaign, the Rhinelands campaign. And then after that, they had the Central Europe campaign, which was when the crossing of the Rhine took place from there until the end of the war. Those were the 5 major campaigns.
Okay, sir. You enlisted at 18 because you had to wait. How many years did you stay in service?
Oh, very few. Actually, fewer than 3 years.
Sounds like you did a whole lot in a short time.
I was home and discharged before I was 21.
Wow, but you also went in early.
So all my years overseas were 19, 20 years old.
Wow. And what you kind of shared right there, you have little stories in between inside of this book, and a little bit about each campaign that you did.
Yes, each campaign is pretty well covered.
Okay,
Stories for each one.
I'm going to go ahead and say, let's lead up to the Purple Heart. What was that about? What did you do?
Well, I'd been all the way through France and Belgium, the Netherlands, and into Germany through the Battle of the Bulge. And then for the Rhine crossing, our assistant battalion commander, Captain Christie, he had 3 drivers shot out from under him. The last one was blown up into a tree from a landmine. So they asked me if I'd be his driver. So I volunteered to be his driver. And I barely knew him when we crossed the Rhine. I'd only been driving for a couple days for him. We crossed the Rhine on the 24th of March, when the engineers were beginning to build a pontoon bridge across. And by noon of the 24th, we had penetrated almost 8 kilometers into Germany, and we stopped at a little village in Germany. The name of it was Guterswickerham. Quite a long name. The name was longer than the main street in town, I believe. It was just a small village. And I'd like to tell you a little human interest story here, if possible.
Share, yes.
We set up our battalion headquarters in the best house in town, which is a nice, solid brick house. And my friend, Jack Holm, a farm boy from Wisconsin, was standing guard in the doorway. And I was talking to him, and he said, "Would you take this letter I wrote to my mother and make sure it gets mailed?" And I said, "Well, you can mail it as well as I can." He said, "Yeah, but I'd feel better if you took it." So I didn't argue with him. I took a letter, put it in my jacket pocket, and about then some German prisoners were being herded into a church next door. So I said, I'm going to go help search these guys. So I went in, and as soon as I got there, the Germans laid a heavy mortar barrage on us. And when it was over, I went back to the house, and Jack was no longer standing guard. I said, where's Jack? They said, I don't know, I think he got hit by that mortar barrage. So I went down in the cellar, and there he was. He was covered with a GI blanket and still warm, but very dead. And I had the last letter he had written. And then 24 hours later, almost to the minute, that's when I was wounded. And we had moved another 3 or 4 kilometers, and we made a break in the German line. And Captain Christie asked me to go back to battalion and direct the rest of our troops through this opening. So I took a company runner with me, a friend of mine, Ralph Storm. He was a runner for L Company. Each rifle company had 2 runners that ran messages. And so he got in the Jeep, and then Captain Christie said, never mind, I'll go along. So the 3 of us started down this gravel road, and we had radioed for tanks. And the first tank went by, and I gave way in the shoulder, and so did he. We kicked up a lot of dust, and the second tank approached, and we were almost side by side. He detonated a mine with his left track, blew up right alongside us, and before I could stop, I detonated one with the right rear wheel. And this blew Captain Christie about 50 feet straight ahead, and it killed him instantly. And my friend Ralph Storm had his leg blown off. His right leg was blown off, and he landed about halfway between Captain Christie and the wreckage. And I went over the steering wheel about at 10 o'clock or so, and I was still conscious, and I saw him sitting in the road holding the stump of his leg. That was all that was left.
Oh my goodness.
The medics were right there. They had set up headquarters in a farmhouse nearby, and they were there within seconds, and they couldn't save him, and he died. But apparently they found that letter on my body, in my jacket pocket, and mailed it to his family. So after the war, I had his address, and I contacted the family, and they assured me that the letter did arrive. So that last letter he wrote to his mother.
That was wonderful. I'm glad that that was able to take place. Up on the screen right now is showing some of those medals that you were awarded. A little bit later on, when my director comes back, we will be going into showing the individual pictures that we had talked about.
Okay.
Okay, but not at this particular point. But as we can look up here and see, you have many, many medals. What are some of those medals up there? Right off, can you briefly?
The ones that I'm the proudest of is the Combat Infantry Badge, which is that blue badge in the center top.
Okay, all right.
That's awarded to an infantryman who is in combat for 30 days. And if you last that long, you get the Combat Infantry Badge, and you got $10 a month more pay,
Wow, wow.
which was big in those days. And then, of course, the other is a Purple Heart. And
okay, well, let's go ahead and take this minute, and the director is going to switch over to a picture, and you're going to tell us the story behind the picture. And this one is, George?
Okay, this is, that's the French Légion d'honneur. It's, I'm a chevalier, which means I'm a knight in the French Legion of Honor. It's the highest award awarded by the French government, and they awarded that to me for my participation in the liberation of France. This was awarded to me in Washington, D.C. at the French Embassy, and my family was there, Barbara Ann and her husband and our son and daughter, and my wife. She was still alive. So that's, in fact, that was the last time we got the family together. So that's where it was awarded, and I have a certificate that went along with it, signed by President Sarkozy at the time.
Okay. Is that one of the other pictures we
Yes,
talked about?
that's
Okay, we'll go ahead and
another one.
switch to number 2, Kenneth. Okay,
Well, it's,
well, he's
I have
probably-
it framed, and it's just a certificate.
Okay, so he'll get that in a few minutes. Okay, so that was the actual picture we have of that certificate that was signed by who?
Sarkozy, President
Okay.
Sarkozy at the time.
So what you did was recognized and honored by, knighted by the French government for contributions toward the France's liberation?
Yes.
That's pretty high.
Well,
Salute.
it's an honor.
Honor, honor, honor. Okay, well, he's not there right now to slide on to the other pictures, but when he comes back, he'll let me know. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say this, George. You had made a quote that I loved, and you said, like in reference to, the book, I'm thinking as I read it, quote, "My life has led me through an incredible journey that has taught me what it truly means to live." And also, the rest of that quote was, "The people I have known will forever live on through the words that I now write." That is the reason, part of it, that you wrote this book.
That's the reason.
Okay, our director's going to take us to that second picture now. And that is going to be what?
Yeah, that's a
Right here?
certificate of the medal, the
That we
award.
just talked about? Yes?
Yes, and signed by President Sarkozy.
Okay, and is there anything else you want to say about this before we go to the third picture?
No,
Okay, last picture.
That's it. Is there another one?
Yes?
Oh,
Yes, number 3. I'm sorry? Okay, so we have the 3 pictures. Okay, that's what it was. All
Right,
the
yeah.
medals. So we had all the medals which we were talking about, and then we went into the second picture. Okay, that was the 3. Okay, now, you currently live where?
currently live here in Lafayette.
Okay, and you've been here how many years, sir?
4 years.
4 years. Okay, let's talk about the organizations after the war. You are still busy. You are part of 4 organizations. Veterans of the 30th Infantry Division of World War II. That's here in Lafayette.
No, it's a national organization.
national, okay.
But for all practical purposes, it no longer exists because there's nobody left. There are very few of us left. And
Okay.
a division has roughly 15,000 men in it. And in 2014, the city of Maastricht in the Netherlands invited 6 of us, all expenses paid, plus a companion. My son and I went, and we had a hard time finding 6 to make the trip.
Oh, you know why I brought that up, George? It's because we have a local guy that has been supporting and doing things to get veterans their rights and stuff. That's why I just assumed anything you belong to should be in every state, but it's not, is it?
No.
Okay, so then we talk about the veterans of the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, this was organized in 1994.
Okay.
Again, this is what prompted me to write the book. People started talking about it, and the local newspaper asked for anyone who might have a story about the Battle of the Bulge, which started on the 16th of December, 1944. And so I had a story, and so I sent one in, and I was surprised that about 6 or 7 other veterans in the area also had stories. So we decided there must be an interest in the Battle of the Bulge, so we organized a local chapter, and we joined the national organization,
Okay,
which had
and where's
over
that?
65 chapters by then. And so I was president of that for about 15 years before coming down here. I had to give it up when I moved here. But that was a very active organization. We spoke at schools and civic organizations, mostly high schools. And the subject was usually the Battle of the Bulge, but we answered other questions also.
Okay, so then we have down here also Military Order of the Purple Heart.
Yes, well, that's a national organization. It dates back several years. And of course, it covers all the wars. So It covers even the current activity in Iraq and Afghanistan. Anyone wounded and gets a Purple Heart, well, they can belong to the organization. But you can get that only by suffering a wound at the hands of an enemy.
I have a question. Do you belong to anything locally that has anything to do with service?
No, I tried to find a VFW locally, and I couldn't. The closest one is in Youngsville. And the American Legion has been helpful. They've conducted a trip to the War Museum in New York, or in
Yes.
New Orleans that I went to, but I've never joined. I should have. But that's the only organization. Now, the Disabled American Veterans has a chapter here, too. But they're not very active, I don't believe, but I'm a member of that also.
I have a question. If an opportunity arose today or soon, would you be interested in being part of organizing something where all the veterans can come together and talk
Oh, of course.
on a television show, maybe hosted by you?
Some kind of a round table.
Yeah?
Naturally.
You
yeah.
still have contacts with different people?
Locally, very few.
Okay. The only reason I ask is that we do. We have some
there's-
contacts, and I do believe that it would be great to hook you up with another gentleman who's been fighting for years for the rights of veterans. The only reason I bring that up is that Acadiana Open Channel, where we sit right now, can offer you an opportunity to extend what you want regarding your book, to reach and tell the stories, maybe not just your story, but other soldiers' stories. And there's also a way where you just sit at a table and the cameras are on you with a good director, mine, and you would be able to talk. And he's also fixed it to where people who cannot come in personally can actually be seen on TV in a picture while you're talking to them on the phone. If you want to think about that, I think that would be something that maybe you and your daughter Barbara might
Yeah, we
consider,
can do that.
and decide that if that's what you would like to do, because I see as an opportunity. I love stories inside of stories, and my director, believe it or not, just told me we only had about 2 minutes left in the show already. So now you know, Barbara, why we kind of crammed this up. But I really believe that it would be awesome, as Barbara and I talked about earlier, some of those human interest stories to be told that are in your book, also shared with other people by other veterans together. So that's something that we would like to extend to you
Yeah, we can
if you
expand
might
on
be
that.
interested. But meanwhile, we want to remind Acadiana today that George F. Snyder is here. He is a World War II survivor, and he has his book that says the Memoirs of a World War II vet. We today just gave you a little glimpse into the many things that George shares in his book. But I have to tell you that if you had not attended the Writers Guild of Acadiana's last membership meeting, he barely got through the conversation of the presentation, and my group was asking stories. And we saw the humor on some of the things that somebody was wanting some facts on, and you corrected them and said they had it all wrong, and that was an interesting story in itself. But I want to take a minute right now before the end of the show, and I want to thank Acadiana for watching. And be sure to tune in every Monday night from at 9 o'clock on channel 15. They changed it, so I keep trying to say go back to the other channel. But if you have a story that you're interested in, or if you would like to be a part of maybe this upcoming new show where veterans are going to be talking among each other, then give us an email, shoot us an email, or even call the Acadiana Open Channel. Until then, I want to thank George Snyder again for coming on the show. I don't think we've heard the last of you. There's just too much to say in a 30-minute show.
Too much.
So I want to thank Acadiana again. If you're interested in having a show, this is the place to be. If you want to be a guest on the show, this is the place to be. If you think you've got a great story, call me. I'll be glad to share it with Acadiana. Until then, the rolling credits are coming down. And George, is there anything you'd like to say while we're ending the show?
Nothing special. I could conclude with this. with an amusing story, if you have time.
I'm not sure we have time,
Okay.
but we have just a little bit left. Okay, also too, the books, your books, if anyone's interested, can be found at what, on Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com?
Right, those are the two places right now.
That right now, and you're also available to speak if anybody wants you as a
I speak
guest.
to organizations.
Organizations, that's right, that's right. Well, I'm believing that you are going to have a lot more invitations at this time. We are going to be sharing with everybody who you are. We will be putting it, of course, on this channel. We will put the show also on YouTube. We will also share it on Facebook.
Good,
And meanwhile, keep us updated.
good. We get
Okay,
some.
let us know what's going on, and let's think about that show. That would be interesting. Thanks again.
Okay.